St. Lucia, the alpha of radio.
Join the United Workers' Party this and every Thursday on Rev Up St. Lucia 97.1 FM for an educational and informative program, Meet the Opposition. Participate in exciting discussions from 9 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. Be in the know every Thursday on Rev Up St. Lucia 97.1 from 9 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. Join the United Workers' Party this and every Thursday on Rev Up St. Lucia 97.1 FM for an educational and informative program, Meet the Opposition. Participate in exciting discussions from 9 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. Be in the know every Thursday on Rev Up St. Lucia 97.1 from 9 a.m. to 10:30 a.m.
It's now time for Meet the Opposition, hosted by Miss Nancy Charles. Miss Charles, good morning to you.
Good morning, Andre. How are you?
I'm well.
Andre, I see you missed out on playing our little Mia clip. Do you mind playing that Mia
I'm
clip
sorry.
for us?
I'm sorry. My humble apologies there.
Yes, we need to remind our viewers every day.
And take responsibility when they see something going wrong in this country, in their community, in their houses, in their jobs. It embodies the idea that accountability isn't just for leaders, but for every citizen. Tanya Stevens reminds us of corruption in high and low places only to remind us that because we have a colonial mentality, we see only the oppression that is above us and not the oppression that is among us. Creating a culture of silence in the face of patent wrongdoing is not just acceptable, it is dangerous and it is destructive. And speaking up respectfully and, more importantly, speaking truth becomes a civic duty of every citizen of this country and everyone who chooses to want to live among us, even though not a citizen.
All right, Miss Charles.
Yes, thank you very much, Andre.
Hope that made you happy.
Thank you so much. Yes. I am happy. Actually, I've been in a good mood this morning, Andre.
So the times you come here, you're not in a good mood?
Yeah, there are times when I get up and I'm like, oh God, I have to go all the way up to Cashews this morning, But I'm in a better mood this morning. I drove up this morning all the way. It was a really good drive. And this morning, the road was wet and I was late. And I said, you know what? I'm going to take my time and take it easy on the road, and I will get to studio on time. And I can certainly tell you, normally sometimes you get a lot of traffic around that time, Andrew, and I'm praying to God. I'm saying, God, please don't let there be traffic. In the Badly, when you get there, always big trucks going down. I'm like, God, please let there not be. And all the way through, Andrew, I didn't get traffic. So I didn't have to speed and I didn't have to rush, and I just took my time to get here. So I'm grateful to God that we're here today. How are you, Andre?
I'm very well, and I'm grateful to see you.
Okay.
And of course, your guest.
I have my co-host today. Not even my guest. He's my co-host today. Lenard Spider Montoute. Good morning, Spider.
Good morning, Nancy. Good morning, Andre. Good morning to listeners. Well, I don't think it's too late to say Happy New Year to I've seen Andre for the first time this year.
True.
And your listeners are hearing me on Meet the Opposition for the first time this year. So, and it's still January. So
it's still January. So we can say Happy New Year till the ending of January, right?
Always a pleasure to be on Meet the
Opposition.
And all the best to you, Mr. Montoute.
So, listeners, good morning, and thank you once again for being with us here on a Thursday morning. It's a little wet Thursday morning, and I know some of you, probably you're at your workplace, maybe you running a little bit late. Take it easy. Do like me this morning. Take it easy. Wherever it is you need to get, you'll be there on time. As usual, I do like to start with a word of encouragement this morning, Andre, and my encouragement stems from an experience I had over the weekend, which I will speak about during the course of the show. But I had a discussion. We were going through some family issue with our son, and then my husband said to me, "You know that when you look at the story of Lazarus in the Bible, Andre, and Lazarus was a friend of Jesus, yeah, and Lazarus had died." But 3 days Lazarus was in that tomb. And you would know St. Lucia, or try to imagine that after 3 days of somebody being dead, especially without preservation, all the organs have already gone bad. Let's say if you take meat, you buy some chicken and you forget it for 3 days in your sink. By the third day, you would know that everything is already rotting away. There are ants, there are flies, there's everything, there's a stench, there's a smell. So you would assume you nothing is good in this thing, right? All the blood vessels even are busted already, etc. and so forth. So when the Bible speaks about Lazarus being dead for 3 days, I want you to imagine he wasn't preserved and everything. I want you to imagine that the body was rotting away already. The liver, the heart, the lungs, all these things were probably busted, all the vessels and everything all over the place, because 3 days that body was already laid. And the Bible tells us that Jesus came and he spoke and Lazarus came back to life. So I want you to think about the circumstances that you're going through this morning. How dead it is. How it is almost like Lazarus's body. It's rotting away. This particular thing that you are going through, whether it be with a child, sometimes a wayward child, a son, a daughter, Andre, maybe a spouse or a family member. These days, people fighting over land, Andre. Oh, that's the biggest. Well, not these days. It's been
forever.
But forever. But as if to me, it's even more now. Families are being torn apart because of those simple basic issues, and you don't see how this thing is going to fix. You don't see how you're going to talk to that person ever again. Maybe your co-worker, your boss, whatever it is. I want you to think of it almost as that of Lazarus, rotting away and everything. But when Jesus came, and he took his good old time, I don't want to go through the whole story, but he took his good old time to come, When they told him that Lazarus was dead, he didn't rush like some of us and start crying, "Oh my God," and we drive like we're ambulance and we're going fast to the hospital. The person is dead already, Andre, but you, as if something you can do, you drive so fast, you're in a hurry. Jesus was not in a hurry, He took his time, the Bible told us. He made stops, he even healed people on the way. Going to Lazarus and taking his good old time. And that's what I want you to remember this morning. You see the circumstance you're going through? God is coming through for you, but he's taking his good old time because he knows why. He knew why he took his time to get to Lazarus, and he knows why he's taking his time to get to you. But he's coming to you. He is. The sisters of Lazarus, they when he came, they kind of chastised him and said, "Since the day we call you, since the time Lazarus has been dead 3 days and now you're coming." The Bible didn't say that they spoke in that tone, but imagine, that's how you would feel. You healing everybody, people that blind, people that sick and everything. Lazarus is your good friend. You let the man die, and 3 days the man died there already, and you take your time to come since the day we tell you that. That is our nature. That is our human nature. But the good thing about it, Andre and listeners, is that God understands our nature, He doesn't hold it against us, and He doesn't hold us to it. We hold each other to it, but He doesn't. He understands our nature, and He's looking at us lovingly and smiling and laughing and saying, "Don't worry, I'll come through for you. I'll come through for you." I want you this morning to know and to also say to yourself that just like he came through for Lazarus, and all this rotten thing that was inside of Lazarus came back to life. The blood vessels came back to life. The heart started pumping. The lungs started working. He started breathing. The eyes started seeing. The hands, everything was working in that body. Everything came back to life. Everything is going to come back to life in your circumstance and in your situation, if you just have patience and wait. Now, if you quarrel while you're waiting, that's fine as well, because that's your nature. And if we're impatient, that's okay. That's our nature as well. But just wait. And I want to encourage you this morning that God is going to come through for you. Do you believe that, Andre?
In fact, more than that.
You see?
Something extremely important.
Yes.
It says that Lazarus was his friend.
Yeah.
So we have to be a friend of Jesus Christ.
Well, there's a nice popular song that says, I am a friend of God and he calls me friend.
So it's when we see we're acting like enemies, we're into bad stuff, bad behavior and so on. God doesn't like that. So if we're his friend, that means we're going to be just like him.
We have to try.
Yeah?
We have to try.
I see Mr. Montoute thinking about what I said there.
I didn't know Spider to be too much of a spiritual person, so let me go. What do you think about that, Spider?
Well, I'm not too much of a religious person, but I'm certainly a spiritual person.
Okay.
I'm a person who believes in prayer. Prayer has come through for me. I mean, there are lots of things in my life that can only be explained by the power of prayers, and so I do not disagree, But while you were speaking, I don't know, I always try to find some humor in everything.
Yes.
And I will digress a little and take it in a slightly different direction. While you're talking about Jesus and so on, it reminds me what a lady said one time. She said she is looking for a husband like Jesus.
Uh-huh.
And you mentioned that Jesus, when they told him about Lazarus, he took his cool time and so on. So, he took a long time to come.
Right.
And then she said, well, Jesus died. And he said he'll return again, and,
right.
so on. And up to now he has not.
He's taking a long time.
She hopes her husband will be like Jesus.
Now let me tell you something, Andre. Andre and Spider, as the only lady in the room, I can take it a different way. That's because y'all men are so bad that she doesn't want a husband. As long as Jesus said, come here, stay where you are. Anyway.
And Spider, a married lady saying that.
Exactly.
Oh, the stories I hear and the stories I can tell you. You don't think we go through it as married women as well?
I'm sure.
Oh, we only there because of the grace of God, for sure.
I hope your husband not listening.
Oh, he is. He's listening. He listens every single day. But he knows that he'll tell you the same thing too as well. And he say, oh, don't worry about her. I'm only there because of the grace of God too.
And he's right. He's right.
But that's what it is. That's what life is. That's what life is. So, Andre, in moving forward, St. Lucia, as I told you earlier on in the year, every now and then, occasionally, more than often, if I don't have a guest, I will be having my co-host, Spider, to be there with us. And I don't want you to think only of Spider as just the communications officer of the party. Spider is a seasoned politician, and he has served, he has won, lost many elections in his constituency, the largest constituency on the island. And I know that he has served in almost a lot of capacities as well in government. He has served as, Spider, you'll correct me, but he served as Minister with responsibility for the public service. You served as Minister for Equity. You served as Minister for Youth and Sports. So he has served in
government.
And local government, right? Yeah. Did I miss anyone?
Well, I also had the Human Services.
Right.
And training as well.
Okay.
For the public servants,
And you're in your own personal capacity, your career, you were is it a physio?
A lot of things. Well, I'm a trained teacher.
Right.
I taught for 7 years. I am also trained in sports medicine.
Right.
And I had my clinic for a few years before I got into
politics.
Well, before I was elected, really, because that's when I actually closed my clinic, when I became a government minister. And I'm now. Well, somebody said to me, I must never say that again. I wanted to say I'm a farmer, but the person said to me, say that you have a farm.
So we have experience, and I wanted to share that, Spider, because sometimes when you speak, even in my own me personally, sometimes people look at you and they don't know who you are. They only see maybe you on a particular platform, and they make an assumption as to who you are and what type of experience or expertise that you have. And I know over the last maybe year, even a little more, since you have elected not to be in elective politics anymore, you have officially retired and put down your badge, as you said, you've become the communications officer of the party. And I don't want people to forget that level of experience that you've had and where you've served, and just see you as just a communications officer and just a talk person. But when you speak, you come in with a lot of background, a lot of experience, you know a lot of things, so you're speaking from a position of knowledge.
And I would like to bring that, Nancy, one of the things that I often don't mention and people often forget is I have a background in sports as well. And I am a trained coach, a track and field coach. And so, and I mention this because I must confess, a lot of my life experience came from sports.
Wow.
And my involvement in sports, not just as an athlete, but also as a coach. And so I have been able to really apply a lot of those life lessons I got from sports to my career in sports medicine as a teacher and even in politics.
Good.
One of the things you learn from sports in politics, like if you played cricket, Andres went to retire.
So you've learned that one as well.
That's right.
So you've put down your bat.
That's right.
All right. So St. Lucia, I think we're going to have a lot of fun. Anytime I'm around Spider, I can certainly say to you, that is one of the things I love being around Spider. He's a lot of fun, always has the funniest of jokes, all kinds of jokes, mind you. Jokes that are up there, jokes that are down there, and jokes that are in between. But I can say to you as well, he's very passionate about the issues that affect us and that impact us. And he has a lot of information and knowledge, so I thought that maybe on Meet the Opposition that he can very well provide that level of assistance that I need, maybe in areas that I am not too well versed in, that I can bring in Spider and incorporate him, and he can, the two of us can try as much as possible to educate you and give you, and maybe a different perspective of as well, because I may have a particular perspective and Spider would have a different perspective based on his experience. So that's what we're doing here today, and that's what we'll continue to do for the rest of the year. So welcome, Spider.
Thank you,
as my
Nancy.
official co-host.
Thank you. And I promised myself, I'm not into the business of making New Year's resolutions, but
right.
At the end of the year, it's always an opportune moment to reflect and to project, And so I was saying to myself, one of the things, I will continue to be vocal on the issues, but one of the things I promised myself is that, quite apart from complaining, criticizing, I want to start coming up with possible solutions as well. And that is one of the things I want my advocacy this year to be marked by. Yeah.
For sure. And I think even at the United Workers' Party level as well, Andrew, just for you and for your listeners, this year, a lot of our programming, a lot of our talk shows, our meetings, etc., it will be focused on both, while we will continue to show you and tell you some of the things that are happening in this country that are not right. We will also be unveiling some of our plans on various issues in this country. We will tell you what our position is as a party, and hopefully very soon as well, we would be able to tell you some of the vision that we have, the United Workers' Party have. We will lay down so that you can now make a determination as to which party you will support. Because I always say here, I know that my listenership is not only UWP. We do have quite a large audience who are independent. I think last week it was one call and said that he's independent. So we have persons who are independent thinkers. They have not made up their mind as to which political party they're going to vote for in the upcoming election. And so our role here is to give you something to think about, is to give you something to talk about, and is to give you something that you can make up your mind and say, I think this is the best party for St. Lucia, and that would be the United Workers' Party.
Well, I agree, Nancy, but what I would like our people to do more of is to question what they hear. Because, the politician will tell you what he thinks will make him or her look good, will tell you what he thinks you want to hear. And you shouldn't be gullible enough to just accept everything that you hear, because sometimes they make outlandish promises just to get elected. And at the end of the day, once they're elected, they couldn't be bothered. I think we must also hold them accountable to the promises that they make. And at the end of the day, you talked about there people who are UWP, SLP, and independent. But at the end of the day, I think even if you have a bias towards a particular party, you should at least make constant evaluations of that party and ask yourself whether that party is in your personal interest, because at the end of the ultimate goal is for government to serve your interests and that of your country. And so I think, if you do so, my bias is coming in there. If you do so, you'll realize that the United Workers' Party is the party for you.
I think so. I no. Well, I do agree with you, Spider, because one of the things or one of the challenges that I have, especially in the last 4 years, we're on the fourth term of this administration, is that when I speak to people who I know who support the St. Lucia Labour Party, I do have a lot of friends who support the St. Lucia Labour Party, a lot of people I know. I've always said, I don't really get vexed with people for politics. We may have a difference of opinion. I'll give you some power, I'll give you some blows. I will not insult you and tell you dirty, nasty things. So, but we on different political sides, but we're still friends, we're cordial, we speak, etc. and so forth. Is that they know that something that is happening within their government is not right and it is wrong, and they will tell you, boy, they're not good, and whatever. But and they'll find an excuse to justify it. And we're saying, listen, this is not what we're perpetuating here. We're saying that you have to look right is right and wrong is wrong. And the fact that you say that a particular decision that is being made by your government is wrong doesn't mean you don't support the St. Lucia Labour Party. It doesn't mean you're not a member of the St. Lucia Labour Party. But it means that you are putting the interests of your country first. And that is where, and these are the, when you look at the states, Andrew, and you look at the vote in America and the reason Trump is the president, it's because Americans looked at the policy positions of Biden and the policy positions of Trump. A lot of people don't like Trump as a person and some of the things he say, etc. But when they looked at his policies vis-a-vis the policies of Biden, they said, no, what this man is proposing is better for me, it's better for my country, and that is why I'm going to vote for him. And that's what I want you to do. That even if you support the St. Lucia Labour Party, look at all that has been happening in this country. You cannot continue to say, I will go and put a vote for these fellas or for this particular MP. Let's say in the case of Beaufort North, which is what I want to talk about, in terms of healthcare. If just for that issue, Beaufort North, just for the issue of healthcare, nothing else, you look at it objectively, nobody in Beaufort North should put a vote for Moses Musa Jean-Baptiste just because of healthcare and the crisis that we are in healthcare. And I really want to talk about it this morning. So, Spider, before I go on to you, I want to share with you, St. Lucia, my experience over the weekend. My son fell ill on Saturday, and I will go through it a little bit. I'll not go into too much detail, but for me it was, and it's not often when we go to the hospital, but every time I go, Andre, it just awakens me again as to what ordinary St. Lucians are going through, Spider. Because it's one thing for you to stay there and talk about it and hear what people say, but it's another thing for you to go through it. It's another thing for you to have to go to that hospital and have to go up and down and do the back and forth and almost looking at the conditions and thinking to yourself, like you there at the time, Andre, and I think that's what St. Lucians are going through. You see the shock that when you go to the hospital, you're not going there to read a book and watch your phone or whatever. You're going there because somebody is sick, almost dying. So sometimes you don't even look at the conditions around you. You don't even see if the light is working, if the bathroom is not working properly or whatever, because you're so focused on this sick person. But after they've perhaps stabilized that individual, you look around you and you realize the conditions that doctors and nurses have to work in that stadium in Vieux-Fort and even at OKEU. You understand? My son does dialysis 3 times a week. So on the Friday, when he came home, he was feeling a little iffy. So Saturday morning, he says to me, he feels that they did not take out enough fluid from him, and he was feeling some fluid in his lungs, and that it was giving him some difficulties to breathe. So he messaged his people at OKEU and said, can I come in for an emergency dialysis session this morning, because I'm just not feeling well. And they told him, well, you can come, but you'll have to go through the ER and let a doctor assess you, etc., etc. And I said to him, David, that's going to be a whole day. You heard the stories of people that go through that ER. So I said, well, let's go to St. Jude's. Perhaps a doctor can assess you, and then we can take it from there. So we went to St. Jude's. They did a scan for him, a chest scan. They did some blood tests, etc. And the doctor says she doesn't see anything, no fluid. He said, but I'm not feeling well. We left there a little after 12, and we went back home. They gave him nothing, not even a Panadol. Nothing. They saw nothing wrong. We went home, and by 9 o'clock in the night, I had to call the ambulance, because he just could not breathe. The fluid was backed up in the lungs and so forth, etc. And that in itself was another experience. But when we got back to the hospital, they did another scan and so forth. And all that is money. All that is money. Yeah. And every time I go to the hospital, I say, thank you, God, at least for this time, I have the money and I can pay for the test, I can pay for the scan. But the number of people who have to go through that, Andre, and you see people there and they are complaining. Now, you don't think I don't want to complain, but they're saying, you know what, let me just do what I have to do. But people are complaining and they tell you, well, I don't have all the money. Can I pay that? Can I give you that? Because if you don't do the test, the doctor cannot diagnose the patient. If you don't pay for the scan, pay for the blood test, pay for the whatever it is, you understand? You have to pay. And so sometimes they give half of the money. They say, can you take that still, etc., and so forth. And I think to myself, why do we have to go through that when we were at an advanced stage here in St. Lucia of every single individual having access to $75,000 worth of health insurance, that you can just go and they tell you, okay, you need a scan, you just give them the card, they swipe it, etc., and they draw down on it, and that you wouldn't have to worry about that. And then you look at the conditions of the hospital, Andre. I can tell you, these doctors and nurses do an amazing job based on the condition. I spoke to one of the doctor, and he said to me, Mrs. Charles, I am tired. I am doing a 24-hour shift, and I have to go home at 4 a.m. this morning and come back to work at 8 o'clock. I said to him, what? I am going to file a complaint. He said to me, please, file a complaint on my behalf and on our behalf. But we work, the doctors in the ER, Andre, they work a 24-hour shift, St. Lucia. How do you think that a doctor, and you into sports medicine, so maybe you can explain, you're not a doctor per se, but 24 hours you are on your feet in the ER, people coming in, managing, who have this, who have fever, who have laceration, whatever it is, 24 hours, and that you can go home and barely get maybe 6-7 hours of sleep to come back for 8 o'clock in the morning again. That's because we have a shortage of nurses, a shortage of doctor, and then we will come to the Prime Minister's asinine statement, and I call it that, to say that at the press briefing on Monday, to say that healthcare is affordable to most St. Lucians, and that it's every St. Lucian can access to healthcare, and that you pay for this, etc., and so forth. Spider, how do you think a doctor or nurse is supposed to operate or can operate 24 hours on your feet?
Well, that is outrageous. I mean, when you think about it, the doctors and the nurses don't only perform physical work. There's a lot of mental engagement involved in what they're doing. And when you're mentally tired, that's the worst fatigue you can experience. And, Andrea, if a guy is fixing my vehicle and he makes a little mistake, except on my brakes, he makes a little error, and then you can bring it back and have it attended to and so on. But when you're talking about a human being and the health, an error can be the difference between life and death. And so that's not something you want to play with, and so on. Now, while you're speaking, I'm thinking to myself, some of us want to politicize everything. But, you talked about you and your son, the experience that you had. Any and every one of us can go through that experience. And when it comes to getting sick, that's nothing to do with political affiliation or sides. So this is something we have to look at in a broader context, as So now, a Rush Clark came to mind while you were speaking, and I heard him make a comment that resonated with me. He said, healthcare should not be a privilege; it should be a human right.
Yep.
And because at the end of the day, what else do you have if you do not have health? And so it is very important that we do everything that we ought to, everything that we can, to upgrade our health system so that we can provide a certain standard of healthcare for our people, so that if I am to go to the hospital, I'm not even more scared of going to the hospital than it is of the disease that I'm suffering from. You go there with hope to get a reprieve, to get for recovery. But then, I hear people make comments like, you is like the slaughterhouse. When you go there, you're not sure of coming back, and all that. That should not be the thinking, and that is because of the situation has deteriorated to such an extent that is how St. Lucians feel. Now, Nancy, you were talking about the conditions of the place and everything. I mean, nothing is wrong with you now. You'll come here and you want to say, well, the air condition is not cold enough and all of that. But when you're in distress, when you are sick, the more comfort you can get, the better it is for you and your recuperation, your healing. And so these are places that you must have, at least a minimum standard.
You should, Spider. And as you say in that, what comes to mind is the fact that I'm going to just use a recent example, and that would be that of Skinny. When Skinny was hospitalized, and when our political leader called me the Sunday evening, because he had a double funeral in his constituency, and he told me, I have a double funeral in my constituency, so on my way back I'm going to drop by and check on Skinny again. And when he called me, he was crying. Now everybody in UWP knows my story and political leader, and he's crying. I'm like, oh my God, did something happen to Skinny? He called me literally in tears, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, what's going on, sir? And he says to me, I'm going to send you some pictures. Can you imagine this? Skinny is still sitting on a chair in the hallway, and Skinny has an oxygen mask, etc. And I'm thinking to myself, and he says to me, we can't leave Skinny there. I need to do something, But when you spoke about hope, if I know that it is better for me to stay in my comfortable bed and lie down, like the people say, and I can estale, and when my belly hurt me there, I can turn like that, and I can hold my pillow and put it there, because that's what you're looking for. You're looking for comfort. You're in pain. You're in agony. So that is why you need a bed, not a chair, not a metal chair. So the hope that you're talking about, and I'm raising my voice a little bit, because this thing is, it's just, anyway, crazy that we're not going for a crisis, Spider. We're not in war. This is not Palestine and Russia and Ukraine, where it's critical circumstances. This is St. Lucia a small country with a population of 180,000 people. And you have 2 major hospitals. And you're telling me that you have patients sitting for 40 hours in a chair in the hallway because they cannot get a hospital bed, and they are sick. Where is the hope? So what is the point? Like you say, that's why people say it's better I stay at my home and die. And people have called me and given me the stories that their loved ones say they don't want to go to the hospital, and it's not because they don't want to go, because they don't know that they'll be fixed. They don't want to go. For starters, Andre, when you reach, you stay 2, sometimes 40, sometimes a whole day in the ER before you can see a doctor to diagnose you. That's number one. And then when they diagnose you and say, okay, well, you're ill, you can't go back home, we need to admit you, they put you on a chair in the hallway waiting for a bed. So I might as well just stay at my home and die, drink bush medicine or whatever.
See, I mean, not too long ago, I was a politician in the sense of being involved in elective politics. I've been in government. And I talk about holding those responsible accountable. But you see, what is holding people accountable? Andre, you're going to say to me, okay, you'll have to answer. If that is the situation and that is the complaint, I come and I say what I have to say, paint a nice story and so on. But sometimes I think we have to be more extreme. And one of the ways of holding people accountable, I say, Andre, you're responsible for the conditions here. Okay? So whenever you have to go to the hospital, whenever you're sick, you have to go to that hospital. Then you will have first-hand experience of what the rest of us are going through. Because if you, which is the case now, as a politician, a government official, can fly to Martinique and Miami and to the UK, then why do you care?
Not only that, Spider, they go to Tapio too. They don't go to EU. They go to Tapio first and then they fly.
Yeah, and you don't experience what the rest of us are experiencing, I remember one time I took a line while I was a minister. I was going to see about my passport and so on, and the official came to me, what are you doing on the line and so on. I said, well, I see everybody else taking the line, so I'm taking the line. Now, I went back to my colleagues and I complained, because to be honest, if you Andre, you had to stay so long on that line. And so, but if you don't experience what the people are experiencing, then it's very easy for you to just ignore it, And so I think they must first ask themselves, they may be able to go to Martinique and to go to Tapillon and to go to Miami, but I'm sure they have relatives who are not as well to do as they are. But think of others, and that's the thing. We must have a minimum standard. Even when it comes to prison, you hardly ever hear any politician in St. Lucia going to prison. So if you have a cell with 10 guys, a cell that's designed for 3 holding 10 guys, what do they care? And so it's inhumane. It's below the acceptable standard, but nobody cares. And while you complain, the thing about it, we complain and we do nothing. So that is why I say, well, in my advocacy this year too, I'm not just going to talk, I'm not just going to complain, I'm going to agitate to the point of taking action, protesting, and that kind of thing. Because if we allow before our very eyes our main institutions in this country, and healthcare is one night I set aside, that, like I tell you, that is key. But if we allow many of our institutions to be destroyed, then the civilization that we have here, the standard of living that we have, the conditions that we have in this country will just deteriorate. And I spoke earlier this week about what's happening with the police force. That's one of our major institutions. And when, an individual can just, have the power to direct the police what to do. So, Andre, if I come and have a problem with you, I should be able to just call the commissioner and say, I want you to arrest Andre.
Come and pick up Andre.
That's just not what law and order is about and so on. By the same token, we have to do something about the healthcare system. When you have a member of the medical fraternity, the president of the Medical and Dental Association, no less, making the observation that things are bad, and that for those in authority who should ensure that it is fixed, they attack her, they lambaste her, they label her. This is telling us that we're going in the wrong direction in this country.
But isn't that the norm, Spider, that we're seeing in this country as well?
Well, we allow it to become a norm. We must take a stand against that.
Anybody who speaks in this country against any issue that is affecting the population, all right? Anybody who speaks. The mouthpiece of the St. Lucia Labour Party, Richard Frederick, and I call him the mouthpiece of the St. Lucia Labour Party because St. Lucia, I want you to know and I want you to understand. So Spider and I may be the topic of discussion tonight, since we're talking about healthcare, so we may be the topic of discussion tonight. But the mouthpiece of the St. Lucia Labour Party is Richard Frederick, because everything Richard Frederick says and does is endorsed by the Prime Minister and this SLP administration.
Very much so.
And why do I say that? Because to date, year 1, year 2, year 3, we are in year 4. 4 years Richard Frederick has been calling out the names of citizens. When you complain about something happen, he comes, he gets your history. He go and gets a file on you from the police. He takes it because he says he has files on everybody. That fake Pamwekide, he said that. He has files, so he will go into your file, he will follow you, he will call and find out about you, he will get your documents, read it out on national television, and 4 years he has been doing that. The Prime Minister has never, not once, St. Lucia, not once stood up and said, this is wrong, Richard Frederick should not have said that. You know, the closest he came, one time they asked him about something Richard said, and he said, well, I didn't hear him, but if he said that, I don't think he should have said that. That's what he said. But he was, the day he said that, he didn't hear him, and that was in question to Bill Clark. He was sitting at the head table. He was sitting at the head table when Richard took the mic and said, Kenny, and call him Philip.
My boy.
Philip, my boy. He was there, you know, but he didn't hear. He didn't hear. So I have to say to you that everything Richard Frederick does to the citizens of this country, the bullying of them is endorsed by the government.
Let me take an opportunity to make a point here. I think, you see, people like myself, who has been fortunate and privileged to have served in the capacity as far as being a minister of government, others who have held positions in this country who know better, who know how things ought to be, have to speak up. And I want to single out Dr. Kenny Anthony right now as a man who has to be concerned at this stage in his life about his legacy. And what will his legacy be? I mean, he has said so many things about Richard Frederick. While he is not a member of the cabinet, he is a part of the St. Lucia Labour Party. He's a part of the team. I have not heard him say one word since the SLP has assumed office on the things that are happening that are totally, outrightly, outrageously wrong. You know, I've not heard him say anything about it. I mean, do we only criticize when the person is on the opposite side? I mean, if it is wrong, it is wrong. And so, I mean, you have Richard Frederick, who was a UWP. The SLP stated concerns about Richard, exposed certain things about Richard to the extent that the UWP had a problem with Richard. And now you have embraced him. The Prime Minister has handpicked him and have him in his cabinet. I mean, St. Lucians must ask questions. How genuine are you when you do things like this? You know, I mean, you have not come back to us and exonerated Richard in any way and say, well, boy, what I said we discovered was wrong or anything like that. And we must just accept that. These are the things that denudes the acceptable standards that creates a society that is lawful, that has justice, and has integrity. I mean, when the rest of us see those things happening at the highest level, what do you expect? You know, and I notice a trend now where politicians just lie boldface, you know, starting with the Prime Minister, Richard, and all of them. They just tell lies. And they are shameless about it. And it is my responsibility to expose it. Because at the end of the day, kids growing up will think it is okay to lie. If you think you can get away with it, to lie. And you know what's silly about it is, Andre, these things are verifiable. Because today, I can go back and tell you what you said on the media opposition program in October last year. It's there, the footprint is there. Electronically, you can retrieve what people say and so on. But they couldn't be bothered. You know, and these are the kind of standards we cannot just sit by and allow to develop and become norms. And so we have to speak out against it. We have to say what we need to say about it. So, well, healthcare, going back to healthcare,
yeah, man. I will continue to speak about it.
Going back to healthcare, I mean, I put it in the most extreme manner that I could, because sometimes when you just say things as they are, nobody's bothered, you don't move anyone. Sometimes you have to jolt people. And so my position is that there is blood on the government's hands.
Well, there's blood specifically on the hands of Moses Musa Jabatis as well, because he is also the Minister of Health.
That's correct.
And I made a statement earlier this week that the Minister of Health conveniently And Andre, you the reporter, you the radio station, you hear the news, maybe you follow a lot more than me, etc. I mean, what have you heard the Minister of Health say with reference to anything that has been happening with healthcare? I mean, we got notification, Spider. Let's talk about the Medical and Dental Association letter. That was the most damning thing, because in that letter, the Medical and Dental Association explained all the issues that were happening at OKEU. The issues with the board and the interference of the board, the issue with the lack of finance and money to purchase supplies, the issue with the fact that basic medicines, I mean, Panadol, ibuprofen, we're not talking about antibiotics, even some antibiotics she mentioned in that letter as well. And the minister said nothing. You understand? And so the blood is not only on, because I remember, I don't know if you remember, Spider, UWP was in government and we were going through COVID. Do you remember that?
I remember.
And when after the Labour Party, remember, we had no deaths. After the Labour Party had the illegal march, they had the illegal march. We had our first death right thereafter. And a few persons started dying, and we had to put the protocols in place. We had to shut down and reopen and shut down and etc. You know, Musa was the one. Musa himself came and he said that there was blood on the hands of Alan Chasney in 1 year, St. Lucia. In 1 year, Andre, within 2020 to 2021, I think a year and 6 months, let's say a year and 6 months, that we managed, and in the height of the pandemic, that's when people was dying. Black is white.
Vaccines had not been on the market.
Vaccines had not been there. We were able to manage this thing, and we had less than 180 deaths, Spider.
It was 80-something deaths, Nancy.
And the Labour Party, in terms of Musa, because he was the shadow minister for health, said that there is blood on the hands of Alan Chasney. Musa came in 2021, and within 2021, 2022, by 2022, we had over 400 in a year. 400 people dying from COVID. Blood on your hands, Musa. Isn't that blood on your hands?
You know, that's the thing, and people, I mean, it didn't affect most of us, so we just go as if, well, you know, but the life of every individual is very important, is key. And I mean, if I know that impacts the health system as well, the violence that is taking place in this country. But more than that, you have had record numbers of homicides, record numbers of murders in this country. We went 75 twice, which is the highest we've had. This last year, we went past that.
77.
And they don't even care. They don't even care. I mean, the government, I mean, the Prime Minister, who is the Minister of National Security, admitted that he does not have the answers. He called for people who have answers to submit them. When the United Workers' Party did submit what they thought would have been suggestions. Now, I mean, it is the Prime Minister who is now in charge, and it is his government's prerogative to look at it and decide, well, we'll accept this. He just came out and publicly stated that he threw it in the bin. That's the kind of arrogance that takes place, and the kind of politicization of everything that happens in this country. And then St. Lucians continue to die, and all they could tell you is that they gave the police more vehicles and so on. I mean, we have to be serious about the lives of St. Lucians. We have to be serious about what's happening to our people. And when you have so much violence, because we talk about the 70-something people who died, and that's on record, and that's the official record. I know that they are more than, I think it was 77 this year, 78. I know they are more than that. I know for sure they are more than that. Because what happens, Andre, if a man chops me today and I died 2 weeks later, it's not counted as a homicide. Very often, they don't count it. So we know that there are cases that, you know, are just allowed to slip through and put brush under the carpet. But the number of people who, between the time that they wounded and the time that they die, they put a strain on the health system. Some never die, but they're grievously wounded. That put a strain on the health system. And understand too, the trauma to even healthcare professionals, because Andre, I might have a bellyache and I may end up dying, but that's not as traumatic to the person caring for me as I come there with my head hanging on the side, my arm cut off, and, you know, blood all over the place and so on. These are the things that we have to pay attention to. And on top of that, well, that one we have to hold ourselves more responsible for. I mean, although some people claim if the potholes and all of those things on the roads and the accidents,
the accidents on the road
are happening. I think we have to be more disciplined as far as that is concerned. So our health system is under tremendous stress, you know, and something has to be done, because we're talking about the lives of our people. And if our country is not a healthy country, we cannot be a productive country. We're not a productive country, we pretty much do not have a country, because standard of living, quality of life will, you know.
So Spider, when we speak, you said you wanted to speak also in terms of solutions, that we don't only want to criticize. And I want us to take maybe just a minute or two to speak about a potential solution that the United Workers' Party administration saw very early o'clock, that when we came into office, OKEU was closed. There was a naming ceremony by the St. Lucia Labour Party, and that was because they were under tremendous pressure by the EU, who had funded the hospital. I want St. Lucians to remember that we didn't pay for the hospital. That was something in the works for years and years and years.
So
and
as
how many
usual,
years.
they pull a bluff. They had a ceremony.
They had a huge ceremony. They named the hospital OKEU. They spent hundreds of thousands of dollars. EU officials came down, they spoke about all these things, and there was lots of equipment and things at the hospital, and then they closed the hospital. Now when we came into office and we found the hospital closed, and then the new administration started fact-finding, we recognized that Kenny Anthony had done a report and research in terms of how much it was going to cost to manage or to operate that hospital. And he realized that he didn't have the money in his normal budget to operate the hospital, so the hospital remained closed while they were trying to find how do they operate this hospital. Where do you get the extra money, because you cannot run both OKEU and Victoria Hospital at the same time, so you had to make certain decisions, tough decisions. And St. Jude. So Alan Chastain's administration said, okay, well, the only way to be able to pump money and to get sufficient money would be to institute a health insurance, because then it means that everybody who comes through the hospital, the bills will be paid, because that's one of the problems we have, Andre. And I'll tell you, just to sideway. In fact, I'm lacking on that. I need to call St. Jude's. My son spent 2 days at the hospital, the Saturday night, Sunday, and I picked him up on Monday morning. So when I picked him up, they gave me the paper to discharge. He was at one wing, and then they gave me the paper. I had to go back, drive to the other wing, go to the office, and then they gave me the thing, and the girl says to me, well, his bill is not ready. Now mind you, I probably, I don't know how much it would be. I would have paid the bill either in full or part payment or given them something. And she says to me, the bill is not ready. I looked at her strangely and I said nothing. And I say, now you understand why we have this problem. How can a patient be discharged and not be given a bill? Now, I will go back and I will pay the bill. But you know, majority of people will not pay. They will not go back until they have another emergency, and they come, then they tell them, oh, well, you had a bill there or whatever. You don't operate an institution like that. That was the sideway. But I'm saying that that is what transpired and continues to transpire in our healthcare system. We go, we access, they give us the service, we leave, we don't pay the bill, so there's no money. So Alan Chastain and the team said, okay, why don't we look at putting a health insurance? There was consultation. We went to we spoke to the banks and everybody else, and we recognized that okay, it would be possible. We spoke to the insurance companies, and so everything was in train. There was funding being provided already. We had done a lot of the legwork to be able to put in that health insurance. Unfortunately, COVID happened now in 2020 when we were about to put the final touches, and we were forced to open the hospital. We had to slow down on everything. We moved into OKEU, etc. And you know the rest is history. Converted Victoria to a respiratory hospital, yes, and so forth. So we were not able to finalize and put in place the health insurance. But you're telling me that the Labour Party came, you found all these things in place, you discarded it, and you went back to something you said in 1997 about universal health insurance, something that says that you're going to provide universal health care, for everybody, but you don't have money to do it, Andre. There's no way, no government in no world is able to pay for health care for everybody. You cannot do it.
I have to come back to highlight something here, and you see the tendency to that try to pass off bluffs to cover up everything. That government must stop, because St. Lucians are seeing right through these things. Because you talk about, okay, they were supposed to open the hospital, they were under pressure to open the hospitals, so they put on a show and have a naming ceremony, but the hospital is closed. I mean, you talk about, what they were supposed to have done, and the universal, and then now they're saying to you, okay, these guys are talking about national health insurance. We come in for universal health care. And what? And we have begun. But what is universal health care? And let's be real now. They are saying that if you're 80 years old and over, you have free health care.
Right.
Now, first of all, let's look at what it is. How many St. Lucians will live to see 80 years old? How many 80-year-olds do we have?
The stats shows there's currently about just 2,000.
Okay.
Just so you know.
So that's minimal. That's minimal. Next thing is, in reality, they do not get. I've said so before on this program here, Andre. Like I was saying, I'm going to use the same example that I used the last time. Andre tells me that when you come and meet the opposition, you'll get a cup of tea.
Right.
But when I come here, Andre, where's my cup of tea? Oh, we have no tea. But Albert, he's telling me you get free tea when you come.
Yes.
But you never have tea. You understand what I'm saying? So in effect, they are not doing it, but they're saying that they're doing it. So it's a bluff. You understand what I'm saying?
And you remember Spider, just again to add to that, after we had spoken about this at length and people kept calling the radio stations and saying they're going to the hospital, they're not getting the free health care. Do you remember that Riani Isidore from the office of the Prime Minister then called Timothy Poleon show and said that it is not the free health care is not available at the hospitals, it is only available at the health centers. And we were like, 2 years later, you have an ad playing. Nowhere in there did you say it's not available at the hospital. But 2 years later, after you have lied to the public and the people have seen through the bluff that you speak about, Spider, you now call in and say, it's not at the hospital, it's at the health center.
But here's the other bluff, Andre. If, like happened to me just a few days ago, you rip your toenail. I mean, for me it was a big deal. I was like crying like a little baby. But I mean, from a medical standpoint, that's no emergency. That's no big deal. All that will take is a little. I don't know if they still have that. Mercurochrome and a little plaster and so on.
And put over it.
So you go to the health center. So when they tell you get that for free, so what? When you need, as an individual, the requisite finance for real healthcare is when you're seriously ill to go to hospital. That's when we talk about operation, we talk about those things. So you tell me it's at the health center. I don't need it. I can afford it at the health center. It's at the hospital I cannot afford it. So again, that's another bluff that they pull on you. They talk about pregnant mothers will get whatever test for free and so on. Andre, you remember, and I'm a Calypso fan, Andre, and so Calypso documents, I want to say that documents what happened in the country. It chronicles everything. You listen to Ashanti's song, Lucian Population. In that song it says we're having over 4,000 babies a year. And that's when everybody was up in arms, our population growing too rapidly and all of that kind of thing, which I think was an error, by the way, because we don't have any population.
Yep.
But since then, Andre, the childbirth has gone down to 2,000 or less.
Yeah, that's half.
2,000.
Half of
so when
that.
they tell you they're going to provide
free health care to pregnant mothers. 2,000 people again.
No, it's less than 2,000 people. Because, if Andre girlfriend get pregnant, he'll send her to the States or Martinique to give birth. So
Andre can afford that? That's true, Andre? You sending them to the States?
But it is less than 2,000. So again, it's minimal what they do, and they're making it sound like a big deal. But if we break it down, look at the reality, it's all bluff. And so let's be real. Let's not just, because they're doing those things not because they really care, it's for political aggrandizement and political, benefit, expediency. And so it's about winning an election, it's about that. Because even when they tell you about protecting the victory and so on, I mean, you didn't protect the lives of people during COVID. You're not protecting the lives of people against violent crime here. You're not protecting people who go to your hospital who die. Some of them, no, I don't say minor. If you go to the hospital, it's not minor, but things that are
that they should not die
things that
from.
Are treatable and curable and so on. They're dying from that. You're not concerned about that. You're not protecting people from those things. And these are the things that we have to hold a government accountable for. And when it has gone to that extreme, I always say, Andre, there are things you can do to me that I can recover from you. You know, my vehicle is parked out there, you steal it. Maybe it'll take me 10 years to get another one, but I will get another vehicle. But when you take my life, okay,
you don't get it back.
That is irreversible.
Yep, you don't get it back.
And so these are the things that we have to do.
So it says to us, Spider, that this government continues, and well, they made a statement, and it's to remind them that this government continues to put the Labour Party, the agenda of the Labour Party, being in office by the Labour Party, over the lives of ordinary St. Lucians. Because if they really cared about St. Lucians, they would have said, well, it wasn't our plan, and so forth. But the health insurance is the best way. Any blind person can see that's the best way, and continue it.
To a certain extent, Nancy, we are the ones who are not really listening, because the Prime Minister, in his own words, said, people talk about putting country first. He puts himself first.
Right.
And all of his colleagues in cabinet, they put themselves first.
Yep.
He said so. And when they talk about putting people first, we were never smart enough to ask who are the people.
Which people?
You know, which people they put in first. We were never smart to ask that.
We assumed that it was going to be the population.
Now that we are seeing that when it comes to healthcare, if you're sick, you go and face the not so okay EU. They go to Martinique.
And the states, because I think Joachim went to the states, Virginia went to Martinique, whoever went wherever else. They just keep going overseas. They don't access healthcare here.
You know, and so they talk about putting people first. When it comes to investment and providing concessions and so on, it's foreigners, Andre, like NH. They gave our ports to GPH. You know, that's that. And when you look at it, they've removed 2.5% while we're paying it. They've removed it for an overseas investor and so on. These are the people they put in first. So, you know, sometimes, because the half-truths, I can make a statement, Andre, that is only half the truth. I can never forget I was playing games with my guys after the first election that I won. I said I won by the biggest margin. Now, on the surface of it, it appears to be true, but that's not true. John Compton, Arsene James, those guys won by bigger margin than I did. Because of the number of votes in Grosily, I won by 1,000 something. But that is only, let's say, 50 whatever percent. But those guys won by a smaller margin, but they probably got 60 something percent. And so you can play with figures as you want and so on to make it say what you want it to say, but let's deal with the actual reality. And that's what I'm looking at, the reality.
Well, one of the things I know, Spider, that has been plaguing, and I think the letter from the Medical and Dental Association also spoke to that is plaguing OKEU and also plaguing our institution, is the issue of politics and putting politics over people. And by that I mean it stems into victimization. So we know that you are not supporting our government, you're not supporting our party, so we will not put you in that position. We will put somebody who's supporting our party in that position, even if they're not able to perform the job. And so you find that the victimization is rife throughout the entire system, even within the medical fraternity. What are your thoughts on whatever you've been hearing about some of that? Because I want us to go into that issue, because the two of them tie together.
It's interesting you asking me that, because I know the Labour Party, they're good at propaganda and they push something, and their followers, some of them are very gullible and they repeat all what they hear from them. And so you'll hear somebody call and say, well, Spider, you victimized people when you were a minister, and they will tell you about, what's the name of the program?
The nice workers.
The nice workers. Now, I've said it before, so even before I answer you, I'm going to say it again to avert what they are lining up to come to call to say, so I won't have to repeat it. When I became minister, I inherited a program, Nice Workers, and one component of the program was the Home Caregivers Program. The government then, the SLP, started that program. They said it would be, I think 3 years, a 3-year program. And they would be giving the people a contract for 3 years. And after the 3 years, a new cohort would be given a contract.
And they would reassess the NICE program
The
as
NICE
well. It
program,
was the
right.
entire NICE program was a 3-year project, and they would reassess it.
When I became the minister responsible for that program, Andre, I allowed the program to continue as it was. The program came to an end. The people contracts were up. We now had to review the program and say, okay, we thought it was a good program, it was providing a good service, and it was necessary, so we decided we're going to continue. Those people were no longer employed with the program. Their contract had come to an end, so we had to recruit new people. What I did was let every constituency deal with their matter, because it's not for me to know what is happening in Dennery and in Beaufort and so on. I dealt with what was happening in Grosley. I can tell you for Grosley, okay, the SSDF employed people who approached them to be a part of that program, okay, and there were people who in the previous program who continued to work in the program and are still there up to today, okay. So when they talk about I fired nice workers, I never fired them. Their contract came to an end. Secondly, they talk about I was victimizing labor supporters. I never did. Okay. When they said so, I said to them, the reason why they're making that statement is because they know when it came for them to hire over 90% of the workers that were hired were their supporters. They were handpicked by the representatives.
And they twisted that around, eh?
And well, they tried to attack me on that and so on. So I said, well, okay, I stand corrected. When I reviewed, it was more than 90%. You understand what I'm saying? Of the people who were handpicked. And the evidence is there.
But everybody knows that,
Emma
Spider.
Hippolyte, who succeeded me as who preceded me as the parliament representative for Grosley before I came back. Okay? She had a meeting and she referred to them as my people. Okay, it was a political meeting she had at the Grosley Secondary School. It was a secondary school then, before it became an academy. And she referred to them as my people. Okay, so the evidence is there that what they were doing is politicizing the program. That having been said, you know, the victimization that is taking place, I think we ought to, like the Prime Minister talks about it, but it's only talk. That is, everything should happen on meritocracy, and if you're the right person, you get the right job.
He says the right things, but doesn't do the right thing.
But then you have a situation, look at what is happening in the police force.
Yep.
Where Richard Frederick went on a TV show and publicly gave the Commissioner of Police instructions to deal with 2 police officers. And those 2 police officers were dealt with. One was sent on leave, one was transferred. You have a situation where the same Richard Frederick, in his Ministry of Housing, came on his program and pointed out individuals working in his Ministry of Housing.
Pictures of them, you know. Exactly, he had pictures of the girls.
You know? And then they're being harassed now, transferred to this place and that kind of thing. That cannot be allowed to happen. That is the destruction of institutions that should be independent of politics. When you destroy the public service, you're destroying the country, because it's the public servants who run the country. And we cannot have a system where the public service will be run on the whims and fancies of politicians based on partisan political considerations. That is not right, you know. And then, you know, you have people in the public service not being promoted because the assumption is made that they are affiliated to a political party. People being brought in because of their political affiliation and put above those who were there before. People being transferred, and, you know, that cannot happen. You are destroying major institutions because, Andre, you are a politician, I'm a politician. Today you'll be there, tomorrow I'll be there. The politicians come and go, but for the continuity, for the smooth running remains of the country, it is the public service that is the anchor.
Well,
when
Spider,
you destroy that, you know.
I'll tell you one thing. After we lost the election, and that's just to substantiate some of what you're saying. After we lost the election, and I went around, I spoke to a lot of people, and I still had a lot of persons, even within the public service. And one of the things, and I'm sure that you heard that as well, one of the things that came out of people saying that they did not vote for us and they didn't support us, especially public servants, is that they were saying that they were very upset with the United Workers' Party administration because while we were in government, the people that were being promoted and seemingly being, given higher positions were Labour Party supporters. And they felt that they were UWP supporters. They were not given priority, quote unquote. They were not promoted. They were not given positions, etc. And they saw people being promoted and they were Labour Party supporters. And that's to show you when Labour Party want to come out onto, and Philip JP was calling victimization every day. But you could have seen it very clearly that these public servants, some of them, were vexed with UWP because they thought UWP would have come in, because that's Labour Party for you, eh? Remember that. That thing started with 1997 when Kenny came into office. You remember that, Spider?
Yeah.
Because during the time of Sojourn, nobody cared. Elections was held today. I don't know if you remember that, Andre. Today. Tikwa, Andre, Tikwa. Tomorrow, Andre and Nancy that were talking about Tikwa yesterday, we're now going back to work. We sit in the same office, laughing, etc. and so forth, and work continues as normal and we remain friends. All of a sudden, when Kenny Anthony came, first thing he did with public servants, if you remember, he changed the law and he gave those pre-retirement packages people who wanted to go, because he wanted to get rid of quote-unquote perceived UWP people who were within the hierarchy of the public service. And that's when the polarization of the public service began. And it's always a back and forth, etc. And so if people are scared in this country, Spider, to even speak to me, to you, because they'll be seen as Labour UWP supporters.
They think they can do these things and find a way to pacify things and bluff the people again, because there's a government of bluff. And here's what the government has done. I heard the Prime Minister in his New Year's address talking about, I have given instructions for negotiations to be expedited, and it has been reported to me that certain agreements had been
all the unions have agreed. That's what he said.
Right.
All.
And he said that they agreed for 13%, and make it sound like it. But 13%, Andre, is over 6 years. The United Workers' Party once gave a raise to the public servants of 14% over 3 years. 14% over 3 years. And then he talked about the bonus, which is something that happens from time to time. We have done it, and so on. But the thing about it is, the negotiations were not concluded. They just shoved this. They attempted to just shove down the throat of the unions what they deem is what is justifiable and so on. That is, first of all, disrespectful. That is high-handedness. That is a way of trying to destroy the normal trend of what exists in terms of industrial relations and so on. So, I mean, of course, one or two of the unions accept it. But when you look at the heads of those unions...
yeah, exactly, I was going to go there.
When you look at the heads of those unions...
The teachers' union accepted it.
People who are playing partisan politics.
No, they are known. I will go as far as saying the head of the teachers' union is a known, he has spoken on Labour Party platform, in Labour Party forums. He's a known Labour Party supporter. Right. And the head of the CSA, this lady who won, she's a known Labour Party supporter as well, because her pictures were surfacing with her Labour Party cap on her hat and her shirt and everything like that. So you have to ask yourself the question as to whether these two unions that agreed were agreeing on that basis. Now people must ask these questions.
I have no issue with the supporters of the Labour Party. But remember, in your capacity as president of whatever union, you are not serving the St. Lucia Labour Party. You are representing workers.
That's correct.
And you're supposed to do the bidding of the workers. And
you're supposed to consult with the workers.
And supposed to consult with the workers. And so these are the things that are telling me that our democratic institutions and processes are being dismantled slowly. Because if a government can just impose on the workers of this country what they decide to be just in terms of wages and salaries and so on, then it's a dictatorship you're heading to. And we cannot allow those kind of things. And I'm happy and I'm proud of the union leaders who took a stand and indicated to the government, no, that is not how it is done. We have nothing. And some of the members too took them to task and said, well, we never agreed to that. How could you agree to that? Only to be told that. We never agreed.
That.
And so, and that's the dishonesty again. Now, when you begin to There's a quote which talk about you tell lies about little things, so we can't be trusted on big things. They lie on a daily basis and they bluff on a daily basis. They have gotten into office based on lies and propaganda, so they think it will always work for them. And these are the things we must be alert to in this country, and these are the things we must stamp out. Otherwise, we will not have, we will have a lawless country. We'll have an autocratic government, and our freedoms and our rights will just be eroded.
Well, I will say something, Spider, that this is deliberate. Okay, St. Lucia, this is deliberate. Because you are sending a message to people to say, I'm in charge, and if you step out of line, these are the consequences. This is what is going to happen. And I can certainly tell you that people are feeling it. And they are human beings, Maybe you and I think differently and think, no, you need to stand up, etc. But not everybody is as bold as you are and as strong as I am, Spider. Not everybody can stand up and say, this is wrong and I'm not going to tolerate this. Some people are just normal coward. They don't want a confrontation. They're just going to do as they're told, and they're just going to go in their shells, etc. And they're playing on that.
Not only that, some of us know what the consequences are.
Yeah.
And it can be dire for us and our families, and so we don't want to speak. However, I'm saying, if all of us stand up and speak, they cannot do anything.
Agreed.
If I speak on my own by myself, I can be dealt with as an individual. And that's why I say, when something happens to you, Nancy, and I do not say anything, when they come for me, you will not be there to say anything for me.
Because I've been, yeah.
So we now have to take a stand and, resist that tendency and the new development that we are seeing, where democracy in itself is under attack by the government of St. Lucia.
So let's go back. You mentioned the issue with the police officers, and I wanted to speak a little bit about that, because I think that level of victimization is at another level. You understand? Because to a certain extent, public officials, were seen as almost protected by the union, protected by the staff orders, protected. They had a level of protection. And so what is being said, or what is being sent right now to, let's say, police officers, because we're dealing with the police officers now, is that you don't have a mind, you're not supposed to speak, even if you see something is wrong, you're not supposed to say anything, and at the end of the day, if you do, not the commissioner of police, not a senior ranking official of the police, Spider, but a member of an MP, and not even the minister responsible for national security, but an MP. He's
a de facto minister.
But an MP can stay and give a directive to the commissioner of police to say, you see these two fellas fooling around, and you need to take action.
And it's more than what you're saying. He didn't just give a directive, he did it publicly.
Yep.
On national television. Now, you talk about victimization, political victimization, but the politicization of the police force is even more dangerous than all of that. I mean, as bad as what you're saying is,
yes.
I'm worried about the politicization of the... Now, Mr. Vungard, as a professional, you owe it to us, in light of what has transpired, to give us the comfort, the satisfaction, and the knowledge that what we are seeing is not really what is happening. You need to come out and make a statement about what has just transpired.
I think it warrants
and the fact that Richard can give you directives on television, and it appears to me that the directives are being carried out. The instructions you got are being carried out. That's how it appears to me. You must allay our concerns, our fears about that situation by making a statement. Well, I've given up on the Prime Minister, because I think what Richard is doing is exactly what the Prime Minister brought him in to do.
For sure.
So he's doing the Prime Minister's bidding. And so I have given up on that. The rest of you, St. Lucians, you can call on the Prime Minister. I think the only solution is to get rid of the Prime Minister. But when the police force has been politicized like it is, and it's not just a government minister, and I'm going to say it like it is. It is not, well, I don't want to make some programs. it is not just a government minister giving those instructions.
You know.
Had it been the Minister of National Security or Home Affairs,
yes,
that's bad enough, Andre. But the man, well, I call him the de facto minister because it seems he is. But not just that. What is the reputation
of this minister?
Of that minister? That minister is notorious, and I'm quoting his colleagues in who is in cabinet with him, is notorious as being a money launderer, a drug dealer, and some even refer to him as a murderer. That minister is notorious for public displays of violence, where he would kick the police car and want to attack the
have
police.
all the videos,
where we had demonstrations going, illegal demonstrations,
and he was pushing against
the police and so on. Where he went on private property
in
and wanted to fight with the police. You know, where we have a civil lawsuit that was brought against him, where he was fined and made to pay for firing a bullet after the people, and that bullet ended up being lodged in the water tank and so on. That is the reputation that precedes that minister. And when you have a rogue or a gangster controlling your country, you ought to realize what kind of country you have. And that is a man who takes to television and just calls people's name.
Black is white.
Like he has the right to just call people criminal, call people thugs.
Call people thieves, call people all kinds of
accusations. Now, Andre, you may know certain things. If you saw me steal and so on, there's a way to go about it. Especially if you are a legislator, you are a member of our cabinet, you are a lawyer by profession, okay? So you are a legal officer of the law. You were a former police officer. Andre, I can give you excuses. I didn't know, which you will not accept, I know, because I was a legislator myself. So he has no excuses.
Yes.
He knows better than what he's doing. And furthermore, you have a gentleman who calls himself a minister general and so on, who has been in government, okay, for about 30 years unbroken.
28 years now.
Okay. He is the Prime Minister, the Minister for National Security. Does he have Home Affairs now, or is it?
No, Virginia is still Home Affairs.
Okay. He has not said a word. St. Lucians, do you realize the path that we are taking? The downward spiral that we are on? I mean, we cannot accept that. We cannot let that pass for governance in our country. We cannot let people like Richard think he can come with his bullish attitude and his arrogance and high-handedness and just dictate what happens in this country. If Richard is listening now and does not like what I say, he can go on his show and give the police directives to arrest me. Is that what is happening in this country today? You know? I mean, and let me just say to St. Lucians, understand that it may have nothing to do with you today. But when the pattern has been set, precedence has been set, and it becomes established and acceptable, your turn may very well be next.
Good. Andre, I think you have a question, and we do want to open the lines.
Okay.
At 10:30, I do have to say to St. Lucia that I do have to make my exit as well. I have a very important appointment that I need to leave. But let's say Andre's question.
So you see
then
the
we'll
setup, Andre? They call me as co-host.
It was a plan. It was a plan.
Go ahead, Andre.
Okay, Ms. Charles and Spider, and I'm so happy again. And let me just say, it's always good to keep reminding people and give the facts.
That's right.
Okay, and I'm glad you responded. As you said, you have responded already, but you have to keep doing it.
That's right.
Because maybe one person who wasn't listening the last time heard it today. So, earlier, was it last week? I think the Prime Minister made an announcement about either building or rebuilding, I think, the fifth wing at OKEU. Now, somebody called the show last week, Monday, and the person said that this fifth wing, apparently it existed already. That's the impression I got, and that this was closed by the former administration. So, would you like to clear the air on this matter as well?
Andre, I will clear the matter because we need to speak about OKEU, but just to say no, that is wrong. There is no fifth wing.
Nancy, before you go any further, how could something that was never open be closed? We opened the hospital.
We opened the hospital, so there never was a fifth wing.
There was never any fifth wing there.
There was never any fifth wing built. There was a fifth wing in the original plan, I think in 19, when the original plan from the EU came, maybe about 10, 15 years before the hospital was built. But because of circumstances, I think the money from the EU, they took so long. I'll give you a simple explanation. They took so long in getting the money and bringing the money to start building the hospital that the value of the money had gone down and you didn't get the exact amount. So the fifth wing that was supposed to be in the hospital was never built anymore, and so it was never built. So it was never prices gone up, and you didn't have enough money to build it.
If I remember clearly, I mean, I was involved in the politics at the time. I remember they used to refer to it as the fifth finger.
Yes. Yes. So it was never built. It was never there. It was part of the original plan way back, but it was never built because of price changes, and the money that the EU gave did not have sufficient to build it because the cost of everything had gone up at the time. And so that's just again a bluff and a political gimmick that the Labour Party is just putting out there to make it seem as if it was a and that wasn't Alan Chasney, because we didn't build the hospital. Remember that. Alan Chasney had nothing to do with that at the time. So please, let's take that off the bat. But we want to open the lines. So Andre, if you can give the number.
Sure.
And St. Lucia, I will see you again next week.
All right. Let me just give those numbers. 572-9710. That's the fixed line. 572-9710. Or you can WhatsApp 287-0971. WhatsApp 287-0971. Again, the fixed line is 572-9710. Or you can WhatsApp 287-0971. So Nancy has just left our studios. So now you're in control. Yes, Mr. Montoute. Yes. Just to go back to what Nancy was saying, just to repeat, because maybe somebody didn't quite catch it.
Yeah, because you see, the thing about it is, you were talking about the NICE program.
The fifth finger. Yeah, the fifth finger. Yeah.
First of all, it was never built, and she gave the reason why it was not built is because and I'm not even blaming the government. Very often those international agencies and donor governments, when they promise you something, Andre, they approve $1 million for you today, you might get it in 5 years' time. And in the interim, I'm not saying it was 5 years, I'm just giving you an example of it takes a while for those processes to take place and so on. In the interim, prices are going up and everything. So what it was costed at, by the time we received the money and the project started, it was not adequate to do all that was supposed to be done. So that fifth finger, however they referred to it, was left out. Okay? And so it was never built.
And it wasn't anything that was done deliberately on the part of your government to do that, correct?
No. And it wasn't our government, it was the previous government. So the funds were just not adequate to do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
You have a call.
Yes. Good morning, caller. Welcome to Meet the Opposition.
Good morning, Spider. Happy New Year officially on Meet the Opposition. Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Was we a police force, which that I'm seeing dangerous threat. It cannot be accepted and by that a sitting government makes.
You're breaking up.
Would you mind calling us back, please? I think that maybe the best thing. It's probably a bad line. Okay, you have another call on the fixed line.
Yes, good morning, caller. Welcome to Meet the Opposition. Make a contribution, please.
Mr. Andepol, good morning.
Morning to you, sir.
Mr. Spider, good morning.
Good morning to you.
Well, it's a pity and not yet them away.
She had to leave.
Sorry, I call her, but I called to the she went away. Anyway, Mr. Montoute, what is the population of St. Lucia, my brother?
Well, as far as I'm told, it's about 180,000. So, some people say 178, some people say 180, but it's about that.
Okay, say what it is, right? And you think at the time you was there, everyone $75,000. $25,000 for insurance.
Well, if you understand the way insurance works, when everybody who's working makes a contribution, the people who are not working, their contribution will be made by the government. But at the end of the day, somebody like you, well, I don't want to call names. You didn't identify yourself, but somebody like you who never gets sick, you will be contributing, but not using the money that you contribute. The little that I pay when I get sick, they take mine, yours, and Andre, who never got sick, and to pay for my bills. That's how insurance works. That's how it works with car insurance, house insurance, everything. I mean, I've been paying house insurance, and I never made a claim, you know. So the person whose house got burnt, they got some of my money. So it is not a question of you going to have to pay for 180,000 people. It's not. That's not how it works, and you know that.
Okay. I think he hung up already, but you have another call.
No.
Oh, you there? Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
so
good.
I'm saying, I mean, that would be red. So I'm saying, I mean, come on.
It's just that 180,000. Let's say it's 180,000. 180,000 will be covered. Yeah, that's what it is.
And where else you taking the money from? Tell me.
Okay, like I said, if you are working, you will be contributing towards your insurance, your healthcare insurance. If you're unemployed, the government will be putting in the payment for you.
Yeah, but you'll never say that.
Well, we have said that many times. We have said that many times.
No, you'll just say.
Okay, well, if we didn't say it, let me say it now. If we didn't say it, let me say it now. The plan was that people would make a contribution, just like you're making a contribution to NIS, you'll be making a contribution towards that. And the government, for the unemployed people, the government will do it. So it would be in government's interest now to have as many people employed as possible to to make the program really viable.
So find out, why are you do it?
We were actually working on it. We are not because you see, especially in government, caller, everything takes forever. But it was in an advanced state, and I am confident that had our administration remained in office, it would be well on the way by now. I am confident if this current government had continued the program, it would have been on the way by now.
But so many things your government stopped while they're in office. When about the election, you came back and started to rush to do things, you know. Like St. Jude, you for 3 years, a number of things. Okay. And now you're telling me.
Well, okay, I thought you wanted a response from me. Yeah, you were telling me. Go ahead, tell me.
And now you're telling me it has to be there? That you're saying that the priority.
What did I tell you?
Priority.
It was a priority, but it took some time. And in fact, not only that it took some time, but we had what I call interruptions along the way. We had to deal with COVID from 2020. So in our last 2 years, we were pretty much preoccupied with COVID. A lot of things went on the back burner, including the National Health Insurance. But it was something that we were working feverishly on, and we had passed the first phase of that program, establishing that program already.
But you put money in the areas. You put money in vaccine. Yeah, get that all. They give us how much $1 million and all. What money goes on this way, you know?
Well, if we were not giving Galaxy so many files to have $1 billion, whereas the hotel that they're going to build is only a couple $100 million. Maybe we could have paid off. Let me finish. We could have paid off our health insurance with just that.
You give horse vision. So all the money. Horse vision. The thing about loan. What the restruct up now. Horse carrying right there.
The restruct was built by the investor, caller, and we have said so a million times. You never heard this one either. Well, you heard it for the first time, so you'll not be repeating what you're saying again. The restruct was built by the investor. It was not with St. Lucia's money. Okay. And if since you're concerned about St. Lucia's money, let me just tell you where some of St. Lucia's money is going. One of the avenues where we generate the most revenue is our port. The Castries port, followed by the Soufrière port. We gave it to a foreign company called GPH. Can you help me agitate for us to get it back?
He hung up already, but you have another call.
Yes. Caller, good morning. Welcome to Meet the Opposition. Make a contribution, please.
Good morning, Spider, and good morning, Andrew.
Morning.
Good morning.
Spider, in your opening, you made reference to your background in sport medicine.
Yes.
I wonder, did you ever touch even a little about sports psychology?
Well, as part of the program, you do courses in sports psychology.
Good. Because I have not studied sports psychology, but I played sports and team sports as well. And sometimes, especially when we go to visit a foreign team or a team in another county, another town, there is always a bully on that team who tries to intimidate you. I played football primarily, and I remember these big guys who used to come and, even before the game starts, he would come and step on your toe. So as to frighten you.
Yeah.
And I played for a very strong team, and I am not a little guy. And we know that there was the bully that they were sending forward. When they stepped on our people, we would elbow them in the rib. Now, I'd say all this to refer back to the minister, Richard Frederick. This guy is a bully.
Yeah.
He's a bully. And this tactic that he used of putting up people's pictures on his show and calling out names, he has adopted the tactics from the playbook of the Labour Party to intimidate people and to scare people from speaking out or even coming out to vote. Richard Kaifausa. This is my call to St. Lucian to do not be bullied. Those bullies used to come on the football pitch. You will be surprised the moment you check them on. They will cower. That's all they are, bullies. Richard Frederick is a bully, and we should not be afraid of him, because all bullies are cowards. That's my contribution.
Caller, you said it better than I would have. And one of the things that you didn't mention that I said is that I learned a lot from my experiences in sports. And so from the time you started, I knew exactly where you were coming from, exactly where you're going. I learned that from my experience in sports. And you were quite right. Do we have another caller?
Yes, we do.
Good morning, caller. Could you please go ahead and make a contribution? Welcome to the opposition.
Yes, morning, Mr. Spider. Happy New Year. Morning, Andre.
Morning.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
Yes. Regarding Mr. Richard Frederick and the police, I just want to remind, especially Ms. Nancy Charles. Morning, Nancy. Happy New Year.
She has left already.
Yes, of course.
Yeah,
I just want to remind Nancy that Mrs. Descott was the Commissioner of Police when she and the UWP commanded and demanded Mrs. Descott to take action against Mr. Philip. Do you remember that?
Well, they didn't command and demand.
Oh,
there was a call. Wow. There was a call by the women's arm of the UWP.
Wow.
Not necessarily just Nancy, but there was a request by the women's arm of the UWP to call in for an investigation into the allegations that were made against Mr. Philip.
All right, but that's exactly what Mr. Richard Frederick did.
No,
he was calling on the Commissioner of Police.
No, that's not what he did. That's not what he did.
He was calling on the Commissioner of Police.
That is not what Richard did. Richard instructed the commissioner.
He did what?
He instructed the commissioner on exactly what to do.
Mr. Spider, Nancy was on your show and the Europe was demanding and commanding Mrs. Pelius as a woman. Yes, I was listening to her.
She was requesting that an investigation be carried out. That's what was.
To take action against Mr. Philip, because it was alleged that Mr. Philip did this to women and he did that to women. And she even said she's ashamed of Mrs. Pelius, of a woman, and even commanded the two women in Parliament that they are saying nothing, absolutely nothing about this. And she said she will not stop. The UWP was saying they will not stop if they do not take action against Mr. Philip. And that is exactly what I am sure.
And what action were they calling for?
To take action against him.
Okay, what action? They were specifically indicated what action they were calling for.
Yeah, they were, but that's exactly what RF did.
No,
that's exactly Mr. RF was saying.
They called for an investigation. They called for an investigation. That's not what Richard did.
That's what he did. He asked the Commissioner of Police to look into the matter of this.
No, he did not. Let me quote him for you.
Okay.
Let me quote Richard for you. Okay, and let's not forget, those statements can be retrieved. He said to the commissioner that they have to be dealt with immediately. That's what he said.
Exactly what Nancy was saying.
So where's the investigation? If they're going to be dealt with immediately, where's the investigation?
And Nancy was and the UWP was saying they need to do something about Mr. Philip, you know.
Yeah, they called for
they
called for an investigation, caller. That's
she was
right.
asking,
And that is
and
correct.
the UWP was asking to investigate Mr. Philip. He was the assistant commissioner, acting commissioner, to investigate him because it was a shame that he did this to women and that to women.
Okay, can I ask you a question?
Yes?
Okay. Do you not find it strange that Richard instructed the commissioner to take action immediately, and he took action immediately? But
I'm
up to
sure.
now, but let me finish my question. But up to now, no investigation has been conducted. Mr. Philip has not been sent on leave or anything like that. Do you not find it strange?
Yes, there was an investigation, but there was because Mrs. Descott did put a team in place to investigate Mr. Philip. I think when Mr. Vanguard said, he said the way it was done, and he will continue the investigation. Mr. Vanguard, as an experienced policeman, will not take command and demand from Richard. I'm sure there was an investigation about the police, and it is his, as a commissioner of police, to transfer a policeman. I knew, and my uncle was a policeman, and he was transferred all over the country.
Okay, so
all over the country.
Okay.
So you all demanded and commanded Peleus to investigate Mr. Philip. That's exactly what Mr. Richard Frederick.
So what do you think about the experience, with which he acted, the speed involved in how he expedited that whole action against those, and up to now,
well,
we cannot hear about Mr. Philip.
Well, I'm sure there's something going on. If let me tell you that no action is lost, There's a saying, and I've said so. No action is lost. If Richard Frederick is doing something wrong, it will come back and hunt him. If Mr. Vanguard is doing something wrong, it will come back and hunt the public.
I have one more question for you. I have one more question.
Same thing to Philip.
I have one more question for you.
Yes.
Richard Frederick is a member of cabinet.
Rickwen that too, because he gave him kudos yesterday.
Can I ask you a question?
Rickwen gave him kudos yesterday.
Can I ask you a question? Richard Frederick is a member of cabinet. He is a legislator by virtue of the fact that he's in parliament. He is a lawyer by profession and a former police officer. What is your view about what he did?
Mr. Spider, Rick Wayne, you all created Mr. Frederick. He was in your party, you created him. You all created him. When he came to the Labour Party, the rules and regulations were laid to him and said, listen, we do not want this and we do not want that. Richard is a straightforward person. And Richard, in all his things, sometimes I say he talks too much. But he's somebody that will come back and say, I'm sorry. He will come back if he does something wrong. He'll come back and say, "I'm sorry." He took straightforward.
So you're saying he will come back? He will come back and say he's sorry for what he did?
Yes, he will say that. If Richard, if I know him well, if he does something that is wrong, that's something about him.
So you're agreeing that what he did was wrong?
Whatever. What is it?
So you are agreeing that what he did was wrong?
No, I'm just saying.
You don't agree that it was wrong.
Did something that is wrong.
So you think? So do you think that what he did was right?
Beg your pardon?
Do you think that what he did was acceptable and it was right?
Depending on what was if the policeman. Why a policeman? You're a policeman. I'm not saying you cannot back your party.
Let's not mix
why
the
a
issues.
Policeman must go publicly for what was said and what was done? Why must you do that?
Let's not mix the issues. I'm talking about Richard. Do you agree that what he did was acceptable and it was right?
What did Richard did? What did he do?
He went on a public show on television and publicly instructed the police, the commissioner of police, and the person running the city police to take action against individuals.
But Mr. Spider, Nancy and the UWP did the same thing to Mr. Philip, the very same thing.
Do you mind answering my question?
No, but I'm
the question was, let me repeat.
Wrong for one is wrong for the other.
Let me repeat the question. You're dancing around it, but you're not answering it. Do you agree that what Richard did is acceptable and it is right? Is that what you're saying?
You have to call out people. You have to call them out. You have to call them the same way you all call out.
You have no desire to answer, so I won't engage you any further.
Yes, okay. Thank you very much. But Philip did that was done to Philip. It's happening to the other one too. Thank you.
You have another call?
Yes. Good morning and welcome to Meet the Opposition. Caller, please go ahead and make your contribution.
Good morning, Mr. Montoute and Mr. Andrew Paul.
Good morning, sir.
And to all the listeners, including this lady who seems to be a better spin bowler than Shane Warne or Militaran. Because she's bowling a doosra from her right hand and bowling from the wrong foot. The point is, Richard Sedgwick is a minister of cabinet. Nancy Charles is not. Ministers of cabinet have a very closely defined role. And one of his roles is not to micromanage the Royal St. Lucia Police Force. So by publicly issuing orders or directives to the Commissioner of Police, he is transgressing his authority and his role and function as a minister of government. Basta. That's a straight ball. Lapan Pies Googly in the point that Richard was wrong to have done so. He had overstepped his boundary. But Spider, I want to ask you something else.
Go ahead, please.
Let's go back to CIP.
Yeah.
Because I heard this caller earlier, and we're not going to mention his name because you started mentioning his name, but he didn't identify himself. He spoke about $7-point-something million to do with vaccines. And it is every time the United Workers' Party or people bring out the corruption or the excessive amounts of monies that have been wasted or unaccounted for by this government, their detractors come back again trying to bowl a dustra. I think we all know what happened with the $7.3 million. It is the responsibility of this government to pursue it because this was a transaction, a legal transaction, where there was a contract. And Shafney and the UWP are no longer in the Ministry of Finance. And therefore, it's the responsibility of the Prime Minister, who is the Minister of Finance, to account to us about this 7.3 or the balance of the $7.3 million for the vaccines. Basta. But what about the 6,000 files or passports that were sold, completely sold, by Caribbean Galaxy at $200,000, which is supposed to be, that's the statutory price for each citizenship or passport, which amounts to $1.2 billion or 3.74 billion EC dollars for a hotel that was originally in 2019, when the contract was signed, $300 million US. Without any change in the scope of the scope of works in the project, the price has increased exponentially to $1.2 billion by $900 billion. And the excuse is that the price of materials or the cost of construction has gone up. Has the cost of construction gone up by 400%? Secondly, we need to ask ourselves who benefits from this $900 billion. Spider, I did some calculations. Each passport application is processed by a lawyer in St. Lucia. And there are two firms in particular, two lawyer firms, I'm not going to mention their names, who process more than 85% of these 6,000 applications. The average fee received by a lawyer for these applications, processing of these applications, is $3,000 US. Spider, if you take 6,000 files, multiply it by $3,000 US, that is 18 million US, or 54 million EC dollars. Lani, des compagnies avocats cette ici, qui presque ont toute l'argent ça. Et puis, hôtel là, des fois, n'importe où ça regarde, il peut encore 20% complete. Lani, laisse passer 20 moun qui travaillent en left side la Hordian. Except pas Hordian to sell. For the last 6 months, there have been less than 20 workers, most of whom are Chinese workers. So, you see, when these guys come and spin balls on these pitches, our pitches in St. Lucia will not spin. We want straight talk, straight facts, and the truth. The Labour Party and their cronies, we know them. Part of their DNA is to lie, to tell half-truths, and try to fool the people. But we will take the time to educate the people, to inform them, and to give them the facts, so that when the Prime Minister, who's been threatening to ring the bell, but he does so all the way in Dominica, when he's brave enough to ring the bell in St. Lucia, the people will be ready for him because they will know the truth. Thank you very much, Spider and Mr. Andrew Paul.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. We have another call?
Yes, okay, go ahead. I wanted to make up one, but let's give the callers priority. Caller, welcome to make your position and make your contribution, please.
Good morning, Spider. Good morning, Andrew Paul.
Morning.
Very good. So I do not want to jump on the whole RF situation while it is very important. So my take this morning is to speak to the people of Beaufort South, because I heard one of the strong supporters of the SLP going all over calling talk shows speaking about the road that is being happening in Mauritius. So let me tell the people of Beaufort, by any chance, if Dr. Kenny Anthony were to offer himself back to go up for election, that they should not support him. Reason being, he has been in Beaufort since 1997, and his time in power, except for this time, he was the Prime Minister. And he single-handedly, I could say, kind of destroyed Beaufort based on the fact that he did not develop the place and leave any legacy. In his own words, while they opened the Independence Park, the square, Kenny said it was not his idea. So it was the people who pressured him, and that is why that square got a facelift. So for all these years he was there sitting down. Do not let that little piece of road he's doing in the last minute fool you all. So the young people of Beaufort, vote for progress so you can bring Beaufort back. Because we have the lands, we have the place to develop Beaufort and bring somebody that can assist Beaufort and do what is good for the party. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, caller. I just wanted to say, with regard to the CIP, I think there's something that is being lost, that people don't understand that, even when the UWP was in office, they gave Galaxy 700 files. And I like to put it like it is 700 passport. It can be more than 700, but 700 files. And that would amount, if you calculate that $100,000 a passport to $70 million. That would have given Galaxy 60% of the cost of the hotel that they're going to build. So in other words, St. Lucia provided them with the means to finance 60%. And Alan Chasney and the government felt that they must have some skin in the game, so let them put the 40%. Change of administration, Labour Party gets into office. The same Galaxy, they renegotiated their deal with the government. The government decided to give them 5,000 files, from 700 to 5,000. Now I can understand if you tell me from 700 to 1,500, you say, okay, you give them 100%, which to me, is a steal, as far as I'm concerned, a real sweetheart deal. But let us assume you give them, you give them 5,000. So it would take them about 150 files would build a hotel. So what happens to the balance? The 3,500 additional files. What happened to it? These are the questions we have to ask, and that's the question. These are the questions that are not being answered. That is just off the charts as far as logics, reasoning, and common sense is concerned. You don't do that, and I understand I always liken the situation, I make the analogy of unemployed, uneducated mother who has children, find herself going to sleep with another guy because he's going to provide whatever to take care of the children and so on. But while that's not the ideal situation, but the converse of that is to let the children starve. So you give her the excuse that, she did that. So in our case, we have no natural resources, we have, nothing really going for us as a country, and we have to compete with other countries like us to attract investors and so on. So you make them offers. You try to sweeten the deal as much as possible to make them come. But when you tell me you go to that extent, I say to myself, something has to be wrong somewhere. And somebody must be benefiting somehow for things like that to happen, because it is not that the government officials that we have there now are stupid. It's not like they don't understand math. I mean, so, it is just outrageous. And I guess that is why they have not offered to explain, because that cannot be explained.
Final caller.
Yes.
Final caller.
Yes, caller, good morning. Your final caller. Welcome to Media
Morning,
Opposition.
Andre. Good morning,
Morning.
Mr.
Hi.
Montoute.
Morning.
Good morning.
I have 3 issues I want to touch on. Number 1, I listened to Philip Pierre at a town hall meeting in Dennery, or wherever he had it. And a gentleman came up to the mic and he asked him about the special prosecutor. And the gentleman said to him that he wants to know about the special prosecutor, what they are doing, because if it looked like if nothing happens, it's politics as usual. And Philip Pierre answered the gentleman. He told the gentleman the special prosecutor is there for you all to use. But Spider, I remembered when these people won the election, they were saying about special prosecutors, special again to hype up their base. And I remembered clearly Mr. Shasta is saying that everything he did for the country, he did it within the laws of the country. And today, that same special prosecutor that Philip Pierre and Labour Party appointed to prosecute the wrongdoing that Mr. Shasta and Guy Joseph, that's the 2 people they wanted to go after. It's going on 4 years, Spider. And not a word.
More of the usual bluff, that's what it is. So they hire the gentleman to show you that they can making a move, they're doing something. He's there for over a year now. He's been paid a salary. But what? These are the things St. Lucians have to look at, because, and you know what's going to happen? Just on the eve of election, they will come with a story where they're going to charge somebody or some kind of thing like that. They know that nothing will happen before the election. So hopefully that will convince people that something is afoot. And then after the election, you'll just hear nothing of it again. And that playbook that they keep using over and over, I don't think St. Lucians will fall for that anymore. I think people can see right through them right now. And because they talk about transparency, that's the only way in which they're transparent. People can see through the nonsense that they're doing right now.
Sorry, we have to end.
Yes, and so, yes, Andre, we have to come to an end. I must say, I did enjoy, as always, being on the program. And I want to thank Nancy for giving me the opportunity to co-host in the initial part with her. I will be here next week and, of course, co-hosting with Nancy. And I want to thank the people who called in to make a contribution. And never mind whether we are diverging views, that's what makes the program. And I want to thank all those who have been listening, both in St. Lucia and in the diaspora. And to ask you to tune in next week, same time, for another episode of Meet the Opposition. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you very much, Mr. Spider Montoute. And you've been listening to Meet the Opposition, heard every Thursday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. So listen next week Thursday, same time, only on Rev Up 97.1 for another Meet the Opposition. And that's the end of my shift for today. Thanks for listening. Those of you on Facebook, thanks for viewing. As always, you can check me out tomorrow morning, God willing, same time from 5 o'clock for another Wake Up and Live. Have yourself a nice day. Andre Paul saying so long.
Join the United Workers' Party this and every Thursday on Rev Up St. Lucia 97.1 FM for an education